All right, let's begin the classes, all right? I want to get this done so that, hey, I'm the person that if I'm done, we're done. I don't try to stay for three lectures at a time. So let's get this out of the way and then end over. Few thing is on Moodle. Did you guys also check your score if I enter correctly? Normally, if at this point right now is as long as you submit your stuff, you get full credit, right? So sometimes the systems respond awkwardly. If I didn't push save, it will give you 0, which I think most of you submit your stuff. Why not check that out? So this kind of content I'm talking about. If you have any questions, come and have a discussion with me, because I don't know how in-depth you're doing, particularly in metals, right? Perhaps you're already very familiar with this, that this as being one heck of easy, childish stuff for you. You can come and talk with me and share your insight. If not, if it's proven to be a little bit too difficult, also come and talk with me. Because I never know what you're thinking, right? A lot of psychology. But anyway, I hope my intention was really to really help you learn something, right? So I think that I really appreciate when students come and talk to me about what did I learn today, so that I can be better, right? So I don't. Also, getting back into last week, I talked to my graduate students and some of the capstone students that next semester when I again open graduate classes, I will be very carefully about inviting other industrial guests to talk about their field. Right? I have to apologize. I try to kind of balance between my course content and then a little bit favors about different fields to give you some idea what's going on. Because I feel when I was a student, this course content, I don't know how much it can help you along the way, but at least at the end of each class, I really want you to learn something, right? That's the catch. Sitting here for 3 hours. So I appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, really come and talk to me, okay? That's the last thing I want to ask. All right, let's get back to the we kind of left. So this over here, as I draw it, is as the precipitate particle grow with time, the interface with the matrix transits from coherent to incoherent, resulting in a drop in yield strength. Right? So if you look at the bottom figure here, the y-axis is the yield stress, and the axis is the aging time. Here I'd like to stop a little bit long because when I was pursuing my PhD degree, my advisor always liked to ask me some fundamental definitions of new terminology. And he don't really like to talk about fancy theories or calculus. He just cared about my fundamental definitions. And he was being very tough on me. So here's the question for you guys. What is yield stress? And the difference between yield strength and tensile stress and ultimate tensile stress. Any volunteer that want to kind of share their insight about this? Do we have any person? Perfect, Lendro. I actually need to give you some bonus because you're always the person who volunteered to talk like last. But hey, please.
First, I would say that yield stress is the point where your deformation starts to become plastic.
Good, yeah.
And
you're on track.
There's no more elastic.
Yeah.
That's yield stress.
And the other, how about the tensile stress or tensile strength?
I think when we go to ultimate tensile strength, it is before fracture. The stress, that can persist your material before fracture.
Yeah. so that's at the highest point.
Nice.
The highest point. Yeah, so this I actually asked my advisor, well, my advisor actually he mentioned about, at least in US, when people say about strength, and if they didn't say yield strength or like anything strength, they're normally referring to the ultimate tensile strength. That's the highest strength. And if they want to particularly state, say for the yield strength, they will say the yield strength or yield strength, right? So once you pass the yield point, basically you have multiple points that can be a tensile strength, right? Tensile stress, right? You can have a multiple point. But if they just say, hey, what's the strength of, say, aluminum 6061, what you report is the ultimate tensile strength, okay? Unless they want a yield strength. All right, so this is something, so thank you, Landro, for sharing with that. It's a good thing. So I think these definitions are, so over here is the yield strength. So this is where the transitions that's happening. So over here, there's a couple of few things. So over here is the solid solution strengthening right now, right? No precipitation happening, right? So it's still, again, at 400 Celsius, you have alpha plus the zeta, but you quickly quench to that temperature, and the elements haven't had enough time to precipitate. Right? Now, on the axis, that's the time. And a fancy way of saying is aging time. If you hold long enough, you get precipitate. So at this point right now, I'm going to go ahead and draw that figure for you. Over here is you have a microstructure and something like that. So this is a coherent semi-coherent precipitate. Now, if you hold long enough, eventually you'll get this over here, like a big chunk of stuff. So this over here is incoherent interface. All right, incoherent interface. All right. So aging is the evolution of time, right? So I remember in the seminar I asked a student that do in metals, what's the quickest way to know if your material has been over-aging? Right? So aging is time, right? Over-aging meaning that you have a lot of precipitates that's preventing, it's actually it's destroying to having a higher yield stress, right? So what's the faster way to know? Because aging, meaning that if you hold that temperature, you want to know what's the right temperature for that, right? You can do like a 2 days or 2 minutes, 10 minutes, right? So what's the quickest way to do an assessment? Like, have I done a good holding time, aging, or terrible time? What's the quickest way? My answer to that is do a hotness test. So if you have a material at different time zones, and you have that material, what you do is you do a Victor harness or Cornell harness, all different harness, doesn't matter. Just choose a harness and do your harness, right? Because the higher that number, meaning that. So I'm sure you know the definition of harness, right? It's before it goes into plastic deformation. Right? That number represent a relative numbers, but it defines you as a material that resists going through the plastic deformation. So the higher the number of harness you get, meaning that it has a higher yield strength. So normally, it's kind of funny is a lot of people, they always like to do tensile tests. Right? They like to see that code. But the quickest way in industry, if you want to know what's the material's yield strength, is you do a harness test, right? And what you do is, at a very different spectrum of aging time, you take that specimen out and you do a harness. And at a certain point, you will reach a high harness, meaning that that's a good aging time, right? And then you stop dropping, right? Because you do a harness test, you know that harness stop decaying at a certain point, right? So if you, if you're a diligent student, I upload this slide. I upload this slide 1 week ago. If you quickly kind of roll down, is you can see at aluminum is 6061 is there's a couple of few experimental data that they have done is a plot of hotness with aging time. So that's the quickest way to know with the aging time, what's the best aging calculation. Right, so here's the stage of precipitation growth. So on the left-hand side, this is again at 400 Celsius, the aluminum copper. Which status as an example, it's a solid solution strengthening. Right? And then on the growth, we will couple phase transformation. So these are very important technologies if you're doing metals or doing physical metallurgy. So during precipitations, atom cluster together forming a gun precipitating zone, or what we so call GP zone. Man, we always like to have this fancy name, gunny precipitating zone. Gunny precipitating zone. These precipitates are crystallographically coherent with the matrix, and they will find dispersion decrease the Nicanor strength of aluminum alloys by hitting this location. So I'm sure you know this definition by now. So this precipitation, particularly in aluminum couplers or any precipitations, when you see that, it's at that place we call the GP zone. So this will kind of give you a quick historical background on thing going on. So why is it called Duncan Preston? It's because it's founded by two persons. So last name Gunny is a guy called Gunny. And Preston, the guy called Preston. They all found that at the same time, and then we named it. So yeah, so this is a TEM. You zoom in, you on the left hand side, you have a high resolution TEM, and then you zoom in, you have this Gunny Preston zone. So I want to copy some of the kind of notes. So steps during precipitation. Formation in aluminum copper alloy. Well, again, I'm using aluminum copper alloy, for example. So the steps during precipitation formation. All right? So first, this is during aging. A fancy way of saying time, right? So aging. Form and growth. So first, we will form a GP zone. So it's a GP zone is it's an S, right? So when we start precipitating, there's a lot of area to get GP zone. So it's a S. So Gunny Preston. Two guys. I found them. So, first is aluminum copper alloy. ALLOYS, the zone. This with this coherent. So just for abbreviation, just width, and then I say slash like that, it's just width. Okay. Sorry. Second is coherence. prohibiting this location. Okay? So at the beginning, you'll form that GP zone, coherent string, good at embedding. So coherent, remember on the previous slide, there's three categories. You have coherent, and then the string coherent, and incoherent. Right? So the beginning of the phase, and the way at the beginning, you get a coherent. Right? And if you zoom in the microstructures, you get a disc shape, with the disc face and edges coherent with the nature. Right? Okay? Second, is the GP zone grows larger. Again, when I say this is n, right? Okay? Refer to as theta particles. Theta plot. So let me. Alright, so once you form that GP zone and you maintain at that temperature, hold to that, it will start turning into a theta plot particle. So at this point right now, you will ask me like, why didn't they just call it theta particle? Right? Why are they giving us a hard time calling it theta plot, like a plot? What the heck is this going on? You know what? I asked the same question when I was taking this, and I'm quoting from that instructor is, he has no idea again. So I'm quoting the same thing. I have no idea. Why did they make my life so difficult? It is like that. Perhaps there's more deeper knowledge in that, but this they gave a theta plot. I mean, maybe they can, if you check on it, maybe they can reverse that. They start with a theta, because the next notes I'm going to write that is, once you have a theta plot, it turns into theta plot, and then theta, right? So again, I'll talk a little bit detail, but anyway, just bear with me. So the third is that you have a larger, so if you, again, hold on to that a little bit longer, is you get a larger theta plot, right? So you start with a GP zone, hold on, you get theta plot, you hold on to that, you get theta plot, okay? Particles and the faces are coherent. Edge are incoherent. All right. So if you're pretty much still bear with me right now, is the fourth point I'm going to write is we start with GP and then it changed to theta plot, and if we hold on to that, we get theta plot, and guess what? On the fourth point I'm going to write is what? Theta. So we'll get theta. So that's the evolutions from a solid solution strengthening, and then from the evolution of GP zone to theta plot, and then theta. I am sure that there is tons of people out there in the field of metallurgy that would give you great stories and explanations of why it is theta plot. But my personal opinion, my personal interest, I simply just feel it's just chaotic. They really understand why. But anyway, let's show them some respect and still learn the content. Okay? So that's how it goes. So C dot plot plot, C dot plot, and then C dot plot. And all the way to C dot, all right? Oh, by the way, I try to be my writing a little bit more courtesy, clear, right? So I'm sure it's improved over time. But if you can't recognize some of the characters I'm writing, make sure you raise your hand and let me know. Okay? So like sometimes like R and G and N and I don't know what's other characters that might confuse you. But if you're confused, then okay, so I am going to move on. Everybody copy this. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So last point 4 is to get a larger CR particle. Both faces and edges. So on the next 2 slides, I'll combine the evolutions, time evolutions of how the transformation begins. Okay. So just a side thing, I just recall, I'm sure that most of you, apart from the undergrad, will have mostly graduate students that make up this entire class. I really think that particularly my strong advice for domestic students is that try to learn English, all right? This sounds very kind of funny and doesn't make any sense. But I always get the feedback of, hey, my English is not that good, so I'm just gonna let it go. Like I'm not gonna be very effective. I think unless you're going to a upper higher education, really use this time to improve your vocabulary. Right? And then the quickest way is reading papers in your research field and read some good papers. Right? And if you have trouble finding what the defines of the papers, you're more than happy to come and talk to me. I'll be happy to point that out. But I noticed some of you guys really struggle for English, right? And I think the important thing is you need to make some plan for that, make some agenda to help you to improve, to get better, right? So let's move on. So kind of switching back is this schematic. I'm sure you already saw a few times. Below is each curve we begin in a single phase alpha region. And if we cool down to that temperature, then hold at a period of time, eventually it will have this from alpha to alpha plus theta change, right? And depending on what temperatures, either 400, 450, and 300 Celsius, its microstructures can be very different, all right? So I want to break down, so another breakdown schematic I want to draw is go ahead and draw so this, what I'm going to do is this is 1 and 0. So this is again just I'm redrawing this figure over here and just redrawing it over here on this blank slide. So this is 1, and what you see is you normally have something like that, right? So this on the y-axis is the fraction of reaction. Okay? And this y-axis is log pi. I'm just redrawing the same figure from the previous slide. Okay? So over here is you have alpha, and over here is you have all the way to alpha plus theta. So what this tells you, this curve over here, this is the theta particles. How it comes about, right? Theta particles. Yeah, you need to have a time evolution for do its transformation, right? So from here, actually way at the bottom is where the GP zone starts. Right, and then all the way down to the theta part. Now the tricky part of is currently at this region right now is not clear. So I can only tell you that from 0 to 1, you start with a GP zone and all the way from eventually get a theta particles. But at this point right now, it's still not clear which sections. I'm sure current published papers they have dive in discussions about this, and they may have already quantized out. But for generalized right now, it's not particularly clear. So I want to kind of share that with you guys. Okay. So I'm gonna upload this notes before tomorrow, so that you haven't had a chance to copy this down. So I am gonna continue to move on. Okay. So here is the temperature at which the nucleation of theta phase occurs. Has a large impact on the final microstructures, right? So you can see it below. This is the 350s, and then you have more a finer microstructures. And compared to 450s, you have a more. So this is finer, and this is coarser. So 比较粗化跟比较细化， and I'll kind of talk about this a little bit later more on my next slide. But this is again, if you still remember, is you have previous I have a curve like this, right? And then this is the DC that, right? So you have a line like that. So So this is just tilting that so we can see. So the most important part is I want to share is practically speaking, it's really difficult to cool something from 550 to 350 very quickly, or 400 or 200 regardless of the temperature. Okay, that's really the most important. So in practice, I think in general is the material is cooled very quickly to room temperatures and then reheated to the desired temperature. So this reheating temperature has a large effect on the microstructure problem. So I think commonly when I do precipitations, mostly industries or in theories, is what they do is they cool down that structures at a room temperature, and then they reheat it to whatever the desired temperature they want, rather than cool it down to from 550 to 400 or 300 or 200, because it's just in practice it's just very difficult for a furnace to cool down instantaneously to 200 or 300, right? How do you cool down that fast? And it runs into a lot of issues. So below here, this is a figure of y-axis temperatures and time, right? So alpha region we quickly quench, and then this can connect to the precipitation of the temperature. Okay. Okay. So a few things I kind of want to again right now is practical process to make fine precipitate. So first is we have solution SO solution heat alpha. Right? So you quickly crunch it, you get solid solution. Second is cool rapidly. Quench. Room temperature. Below so FR Z by increasing the alpha structure. Right? So lastly, third. Responding to the Okay, so this is in handwriting that correlate what I'm talking about the previous slide. Right? So you first have a solid solution and alpha phase, right? And then you quickly cool down to room temperature and you raise the temperature, regardless 400, 300, or 100. Right? So this is very practical what it is. Right? Yeah, so actually I know what you're talking about. So later I actually have a slide for the TTT, how we can raise it. So I'll show that a little bit later. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so kind of in the retro, kind of jumping ahead, I think you asked a great question is, regardless what you do is you have to you cool down to a room temperature, right? And then you raise to that desired temperature of what you want. So that's only the catch. And that temperature can be 200 or 300. So this slide over here, what the most important information I want to convey is we need to cool down to room temperature. That's it, right? And then whatever that temperature is, either 200, 300, 400, or 500, it depends on your TTT curve. So that knows. So I'm gonna have that a little bit more detail on the next slide. Right, the numbers. So so I'm gonna draw the number. Yeah, slide 37, which is empty right now. We're gonna have that detail. But thanks for asking. It's a good question. All right. We have everybody that have all the notes now. Everybody good? No? Yes? Good? Very good. All right, so again, going back this is a TTT curve in a other way around, but bear with me is even though the reaction time are roughly the same, loading at 350 you produce a more finer structures than 450. So at this point right now, we're kind of jumping back and forth about, hey, why do we get a coarse structure? Why do we get a fine structure? Like what's really going on? So this slide over here on T theta is, once over here it's the alpha, right? So once we pass this over here, we get alpha plus C, right? So again, the aluminum plus copper, for example. Now, if you recall, I was talking about these two strings that's pulling around. One is the G3 free energy. The second is the diffusion, right? So again, the reaction time. So if we cool the temperature over here, right over here, this nodes over here, we have a faster transformation, right? Because this is y-axis is the reaction time, right? Now, because over here, or over here, or over here, this is more slow. The transformation is slow. In terms of the microstructures, if you look down bottom of here, I'm giving you two examples. One is the 350, and another is 450, right? So 350, I put a dot over here, and 450 over here. All right, so I'm using these two examples to kind of look why the microstructure is different. So let's look at the 350. So 350 here, I stated a rapid nucleation and sluggish growth. Right. So what does that mean is that if we cool down to 350 Celsius, what it does is that we have a higher free energy for it to nucleate, right? But the temperature is lower, that results the sluggish of the elements for moving, right? 450 Celsius is another way, kind of other side around. Okay, so I won't talk more about that. So over here, I'm gonna again write down the notes. Is lower temperature, precipitation, so we have what? If we have lower temperature, we have a high driving force. What is driving force? Meaning that we have more free energy, right? At the force, and that result of high nucleation. Okay, and but a low diffusivity or diffusion, right? So particles grow very slow. Now, if we have higher temperature, high temperature, P, precipitation, PI, the other way around is, then that's, you have a lower driving force, right? Lower driving force. Low nucleation. But instead you have high diffusion. So high diffusion. So particles grow rapidly. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy this down, and then my next empty slide, I'm going to talk about what's going on that combine this with the TTT diagram, okay? And how why the microstructure is so different between the low temperature precipitation and the high temperature precipitation. All right. So let's go ahead and copy this next. don't know if you noticed, it's just, these two things I'm writing is just opposite, right? If you have low and high, so for low, you have a high driving force, high nucleation rate, but low diffusivity. Particles grow slow. Particle goes slow. You have high temperatures, you have low driving force, low nucleation rate, but high diffusivity, but particles grows rapidly. Right? So it's just inverse, opposite. Okay. All right. Is everybody done copying this down? So if you combine, so getting back is, so how does this reflect upon the microstructures? So I'm gonna move on. So a few other notes I wanna kind of take down. So we continue to talk about aging, right? So just a quick definition of over-aging. So over-aging, O-V-E-R. I'm sorry. O-V-E-R-H, so no new particles. Is it 16? Particles. Pulse to low. Lower. All right, let's have a break and then we'll be back. Okay.